Hey guys, I'm Joe. I'm one of the co-founders of Hyre. We've just been on the podcast today with Blake and Deck talking through my journey, everything from promoting dance parties and DJing through to starting an agency and everything in between. It's been a lot of fun. Give it a listen.
We have Joe from Hyre on Confessions of a Recruiter podcast.
Happy to be here.
Thanks for coming on.
Pleasure. I've never done one of these before, so I'm pretty excited.
I love that. So we're excited to have you on because your background is interesting, super interesting. You've done a lot more than just the average punter in recruitment, and we'll get into that in a moment. But from a high level, maybe for people listening, let's just give them some context on who you are. So you've been running your own agency for almost 8 years.
Yeah.
You invest in a lot of businesses, and we'll probably dive into that a little bit more. But do you just want to share kind of where you've come, just for a couple of minutes, where you've come from and what you're getting up to at the moment?
Sure. I'll go a little bit back, sort of ties in. My entrepreneurial journey started in my early 20s as a DJ enthusiast. I wanted to play house music and dubstep in nightclubs. I quickly figured out to do that, you had to sell a lot of tickets for the promoters. So I was in a sales job at the time, but I was sort of also just cruising around selling tickets. And I very quickly figured out I would rather be the person that has some other people sell some tickets for me, and launched a promotions company and threw massive parties. And it was a great time. Pretty wild. We could do a separate podcast about that. But what I realized sort of after like a year or so is it was the business that really excited me more than the whole like music and DJing scene. I was really into it. I also knew I wasn't going to be kicking around nightclubs at 4 a.m. for the rest of my life. So that was sort of a light bulb moment for me where I knew I wanted to be a business owner of some shape or form in the future, but I had no idea what that was going to be. Just through a family handout, essentially, after the end of my party phase, I fell into software testing, which I did for about a year and a half. And so that sort of landed me in the center of the tech space in New Zealand, in Auckland. I was the world's worst software tester.
How do you test software?
Well,
just try and use it.
Yeah, basically there'd be like a bunch of, does it do this if you do that? If you don't put an email address in, does it give you a warning? You see, I'm struggling to explain it now. It's how bad I was at this. Really bad at it, but really enjoyed tech. I was interested in that. So now I know I like tech. I want to start a business one day, and I'm sort of kicking around thinking like, what am I going to do next? I'm talking to various recruiters, and an agency said like, why don't you do recruitment? Like, have you thought about that as a profession? I'm sure every guest you've ever had fell into the job. It's not something you sign up for in high school, but I sort of looked at recruitment there and then through a few different lenses. I could see that the bird's eye view you're going to have into a lot of different companies and economy would be a powerful thing. And I could see that I was going to be selling a service that was reliant on me, myself, and I, as opposed to selling, say, Salesforce, Oracle, or SAP. And my sales figures are only going to be as good as the product updates. So that was really appealing to me as well. So I joined what could only be described as a super boiler room agency in Auckland. You can check my LinkedIn. I'm not going to yell names on the podcast, but you can have a look at my LinkedIn. But yeah, they're like a global business, 480 offices, thrown straight into the fire pit. And yeah, it was brutal. Like the KPIs and stuff, like they just...
But it's the best breeding ground.
It was amazing. Yeah. It was amazing.
Sucks at the time.
It was brutal.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I thrived in it, to be honest. I actually really enjoyed it. I didn't enjoy the leadership in that. So I think those environments can be good to foster that behavior and that kind of like everything you need. But I also think historically you can find quite a lot of toxic leaders in that space. And I certainly had one. She used to make people cry on a regular basis. And so me and her had a bit of friction pretty quickly. And, I wasn't going to be bullied and basically caused chaos in the office and got fired from that job. So that was my first experience with recruitment. But then the second agency was everything you would want a recruitment agency to be. It was fast-paced, it had about 30 people, highly, highly successful, worked with multiple million-dollar billers. But they were super cool, just human, down to earth, like we don't need to be dicks about this kind of people. And that's where I really sort of hit my straps and sort of found my place in the industry, so to speak, and did really well in that in my first year, and was loving life as a 25-year-old in Auckland, driving around in a little Audi, and was earning reasonable money, and it was felt like a huge success. But I very quickly had no friends because they were all moving to Sydney. So I came over and visited them all one New Year's and could see exactly why they'd moved to Sydney, and decided I was going to make that move pretty quickly myself. So I moved here 2013, joined a really small agency, which, it was a great little shop, but probably a slight disadvantage to someone that didn't know the market very well. So I was there for maybe a year, and then I joined a much bigger agency and really learnt Sydney in that moment, or in that sort of 2 years. Again, working around lots of really, really good people, learnt lots. You've got a floor of 60 recruiters. You're going to hear a lot about what's going on pretty quickly. And it was we're all young, we're single, we're out like having drinks, like you're living, breathing, eating this culture. So I feel like I learnt quite quickly. The thing about those big agencies is once you feel like you know enough, you then start realizing, the 10% commission difference is paying for these, like conferences away or the marble credenzas on the 51st floor. And I knew I was getting underpaid, and I knew I probably could go to a smaller agency and get a better commission rate at that stage. And look, maybe I should have stayed longer, maybe I shouldn't have, but that was a decision I made at the time. So I joined another agency that was a bit more like mid-sized, but they were really trying to grow and build something new. That was a cool thing to be a part of, but it was also super cool to be around the founders of that business, because by this point, I was well and truly in my head, I am starting a recruitment business. I don't know when. I will know when the right time comes, but I'm doing it. So that also appealed to me to get that, day-to-day interaction, seeing what's going on, how's the business operating. And I did really well there. Smaller business, but became the top biller within a year and a half, won some really big clients. And
Was that talent?
that was Ashdown.
Ashdown. True.
Yeah. I had a really good time there. It was cool. So at this time, I'm living with my best mate. Well, I say we're brothers because we fight more like brothers than best mates. He's an internal recruiter for a finance company from London. He's been doing it for about 15 years. And we're sort of having conversations with each other about starting a business. And the timing all just lined up. We were very sort of free in terms of responsibilities. I had a good bunch of clients that I knew were going to come with me from Ashdown. And I approached it in a really respectful way with those founders, as opposed to just leaving and taking the clients. That sort of sat them down and was like, look, I'm going to leave. I'm going to start my own company. I'm your top performer. From a PR perspective, let's make this look like a success to everyone else. And if you allow me to continue working with my clients that are X, Y, and Z without any interruption, I will make a big effort to embed whoever you want from Ashdown into the client as well. And we can compete head to head because they were clients I won. No one in the business actually knew them. And so they were like, sweet, that seems pretty cool. So we left on really good terms. And Jay and I went about launching Hyre, which was April 2017 on the balcony of our Bondi flat. It's been a wild journey. I remember the first day like it was yesterday. It took me 3 hours to figure out how to make an email signature. So that took me to about 12 p.m. in the afternoon. By 2 p.m. in the afternoon, we had 8 jobs on and we're off. It's been a wild ride since.
That's awesome. That's a really encouraging story, because not many people go through those transitions, especially on the way you ended your previous employment to go start your own agency. 9 times out of 10,
you've got to give respect to get it, I think.
Yeah.
And you got to be comfortable having uncomfortable conversations. That was an uncomfortable conversation to sit 2 founders down and be like, I'm leaving, I'm starting my own business, I'm wanting to take my clients with me.
Was there any awkwardness?
I felt uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But I felt the 2 guys were incredibly understanding and supportive. So no, I don't think there was any awkwardness, because I think it was approached in a really respectful way. And up until my time of departure, I worked so hard to get them the best results I could and go out on a good note. Whereas I think most people would be like, right, I'm going to avoid that tricky conversation because it's going to be tricky.
I'm just going to book a holiday.
Yeah.
I'm going to go and find myself.
Totally.
And then, I found I want to be an agency director when I get back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're going to do the whole thing. Old mate A and B over here are going to feel absolutely slighted, and you're just opening a door of problems.
Yeah.
So while uncomfortable initially, it felt like the right thing to do.
So what does Hyre recruit? Tell us about Hyre. Is it
Yeah.
perm, contracts? What
Yeah,
is
so
it?
we are predominantly a perm house, I would say. We're working on changing that. But that is our sort of natural happy space, has been over the years. Our core area within tech, we specialize across infrastructure, or cloud infrastructure, data and software engineering. We'll go outside those lines occasionally in certain scenarios. Like we have had scenarios where we've been building full teams in like a hybrid RPO capacity, and that might include a product manager or a UX person or whatever, and we'll recruit those. I think when you've been doing it long enough, you can figure it out. But those are our predominant verticals and the areas that we play in. In terms of client base, we do have customers at each end of the scale, right, from the one-person startup that's just secured their first sort of seed round through to the country's largest retail bank, the country's largest supermarket, country's largest telco. But our sort of main market that we end up working with the most is probably like mid-sized product-focused companies. And we like working with companies that we think are really, really cool, but not a lot of people know about them, because our sort of unique approach to recruitment from a Hyre perspective really is not focused around, knowing 100 candidates from this vertical or this, that, and the other. We present ourselves as a marketing arm of your business. So I want to come in and understand everything about your company, start to finish, right from the founders through to the funding, through to the socials. What does the office look like? Everything. Compare that against the 20 other companies I know that are similar. Figure out where you're outperforming them and be able to craft a narrative that is going to get people excited. Like our job is to bring people you want who don't know who you are to the table for a conversation. So the audience that best fits that, is generally companies that are growing but aren't that well known yet and need a good pitch behind them.
All right, so I want to pause there.
Yep.
You've just articulated that beautifully.
Thank you.
Now, when did you learn that was your positioning? Was that at Ashdown?
Yeah, it started at Ashdown because I was one of my major clients was a consulting firm. And traditionally in tech, people don't love working for consulting firms. They want to work directly for the company. And so it was really hard to get people interested in this. And we're talking 2017, right? So back then, like, people were just flicking out a Word PD and hoping for the best. So I started putting like Google pictures of the Macquarie Bank office on emails and like just doing little things that helped like zhuzh it up a bit. Yeah. And I was getting a good response from that. And so I just built on that really. And that turned into like full sort of over time, Canva decks on companies that we'll build ourselves or
followed a similar path.
Yeah, like, mate, from a sales pitch perspective, back in the day, like, obviously starting a brand new company, we're pretty conscious of ad spend. So we didn't want to do too much of that. But when we were talking to companies and sort of trying to, give us a crack, give us a go, my conversation would have very little to do with recruitment and be more about, okay, get all the information first, and then give me a day to go away. I will come back and pitch your own company to you. This is what I think is really exciting about what you guys are doing. And then I think you should call your existing recruiters who have placed many people, they're successful, and just ask them to pitch the company back to you. They should have more practice than me. See what it sounds like side by side. And that worked, surprisingly.
You blew your competition out of the water?
Well, like, I definitely got on the panels.
Yeah.
I don't know about blowing the competition out of the water, but I got on the panels and, we really sort of grabbed onto that concept because we believed in it. That's just how we were sort of naturally doing the job. But then to sort of stand back and be like, this is actually a little different. There's a whole conversation here. It became a really, really big thing for us over time. And it's sort of, I've got mates in advertising and stuff, and like recruitment's a bit weird in a sense, especially when you have companies working with multiple agencies. Like Coca-Cola is never allowing 3 advertising agencies to run rogue with different advertising campaigns that they've created on their own, right? They want brand consistency. There's a small pond, we're all fishing in it, like send the wrong person in with the wrong bait and it's a problem. And I think back then especially, it's not so much the case now because a lot of tech companies have invested in really capable people teams who invest in this stuff. But back then, it definitely was not as much of a thought about what recruiters were saying to talent in the market about their business. and we were in a talent short space, like engineering in particular, really talent short space. So yeah, that was our we sort of fell into it and then defined it more over time. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I kind of almost would do the similar thing when I was, recruiting at Vendito. And I love how humble and raw you need to be for that approach to work.
Totally.
Because unless you're super grounded and confident with your ability and confident with feedback, and if you butcher it, you butcher it. And ultimately, if you aren't the best person for the job, then you're not going to get the job.
Totally. Yeah.
And so I used to do something similar where I would, probably in a bit more of a negative spin maybe,
Yeah.
I'd go, I would get the brief. I would tell them everything about who are you as a person. I want to really be able to pump you up and make sure that people are excited to work for you as a leader. Tell me about you and just try and get on different avenues. And then I would plant the seed down and go, so what are these other recruiters? What are they actually saying about you guys? Like if you're just giving your job out to someone, what if they butcher it and say to someone how good you are, but in a really surface level, they're not interested. And then I come in and then do a really good job. They don't even want to speak to me anymore because they've already spoken to another recruiter.
Totally.
And they've ruined the opportunity for that candidate. What do you do there to stop that from happening?
Yeah.
And half the time they're like, okay, I didn't think about that.
It's a massive issue.
Yeah.
And as well, then you'll have sometimes a scenario where you've managed to go and save the candidate, essentially, repitch it, get them excited. It's all happened and they've got the role, and then original agency is trying to send the invoice.
Yeah.
I've encountered that a few times. But I think it's the most important thing. And when I think about my own business, and if we engage rec to recs to ever recruit for us, I want to know what you're saying about us.
Yep.
I don't know if I could trust a rec to rec to ever recruit for us anymore.
Yeah, look.
Have you used Rec to Recs?
Yeah. It's a real
Success?
Super mixed bag. There's one in particular who is incredibly amazing. Barton Mills, Mark.
Okay. Yeah.
I've heard of him.
He's incredible. Not only has he placed me in Ashdown, but he's recruited easily over the course of the last 8 years our most successful staff. And his level of meticulous care and the clear sort of pride he takes in his work, it just shines. So I would give him a big recommendation.
Nice.
I find with Rec to Recs, I struggle to get them interested.
Yeah, well, that is a big problem. That's the problem I've had.
Yeah.
So, you're a four-man agency.
Why would I send anyone to you? I've got my clients that they'll pay me a higher fee for.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Had the same conversation.
Yeah.
That's real soul destroying, absolute dick.
Yeah. I sometimes I've said to them, I'll pay you full fee. I don't really care. They just go, yeah, but why would I send you a good person? I've got someone else that I work with, so I'll just send them to them for full fee. I'm well, how can I win here?
Yeah, it's really weird.
It's so strange.
Imagine if you told that to a client. They tell you to fuck off. Don't worry about recruiting the role.
Totally. Yeah. I've encountered that level of arrogance before and been pretty amazed by it because it wouldn't fly in our world, not for a second. I've definitely sat customers down in our business in the past and been like, look, for whatever reason, whether it's on your side or our side, and there's many variables in that equation, this isn't going to work. I think you should look at different partners, and here's why. Yeah. But only in the most respectful and polite possible way.
You've drowned everything out, not in the first conversation of the client.
Totally. Trying to get a job brief and they just brush up.
Yeah. No, these conversations are happening way down the line. We've absolutely flogged it by that point.
So tell us about your team. What size team have you got?
So at the moment we're 4, probably a little bit smaller than usual. Our natural scale points probably 6 or 7. At our biggest we were 10. Last 18 months pretty brutal in tech. There's a whole story around that, but we basically needed to make the team a bit smaller through that time.
So you got 4 billing consultants?
Yeah.
That's a solid team.
Yeah.
I know you kind of prefaced it with it's smaller than you'd like.
But when I say team, Jay and I are 2 of them.
That's fine.
Yeah, but we're billing consultants ourselves. We're in the weeds. We're doing deals.
Yeah. Totally. I love that. The most profitable agencies are under 10.
Yeah.
So the sweet spot is definitely 4 to 6.
It's so wild. I was comparing numbers from 2018 to 2021. 2018 there was 4 of us again, sitting in a WeWork. 2021, which is a boom year, there were 10 of us, bougie office, all the rest. The revenue was massive over here, but the profitability was exactly the same in both years, and there was a lot less hassle in 2018. So it definitely, I think as a, I don't think you necessarily know what you want to be when you're starting a recruitment business. We just sort of rode a wave, just naturally, organically got bigger. Like for us, it was a race for the first 6 years. We had 2 months in that whole period of time that were not profitable, and we just sort of hired people as it made sense to hire people, and it just, without trying to sound like arrogant, my memory of it is it was like pretty easy. But then the last sort of 18 months, that's been a different story. And so now we have those two sort of viewpoints, which is really allowing us to look at the two sides of the coin and figure out, what's good for us, and approach that sort of future problem with a lot more kind of knowledge and wisdom.
Yeah, well, I think where you get unstuck depends who you hang around as an agency owner. But like you think stuff matters, like vanity metrics or ego measurements, like, caring about how many square meters your office is, whether you own your own office, what your head count is. And those things look impressive when you explain to people, But like when you get your investor sheets, you don't give a shit about that stuff. You care about the profitability and the run rate of the cash injection and the ROI of your investment. Yet when we're new business owners, we care so much because, like, say you go to your parents, and neither of my parents were in business, but you go, oh, mate, we got X headcount. They'll be like, whoa, you must be killing it.
Yeah.
And you're like, no, mate, I'm actually making way less money than I ever thought. I'm more stressed. But thanks, Mum.
It's such a phenomenal point, because any time in any social interaction, what do you do? Like, I own a tech recruitment business. First question, how many people do you have?
Yeah.
It's like the measure of success. But, it definitely, like, it's different for everyone, right? Like, I'll be honest, like, at 10, I actually really didn't enjoy my job too much. Like, I had turned into full-time people manager. I'm looking at spreadsheets all day. I'm doing operations. I'm figuring out the money stuff. Like that for me, I went from being the striker to the football manager, and I didn't know that I wouldn't like that until I was sort of in that position. So if we ever grew that big, I'm sure we will. I'll be hiring a manager to be my boss. Like, I want to be like in the trenches.
Did you ever get like coaching or advisory throughout your business journey?
No, and I think that was probably an oversight on my part. So, I want to be, and like I say this now for any future business owner out there. We spent no time from the very beginning really focusing on our business. We spent 100%,
strategic
110%.
time.
Yeah, none.
Yeah.
We were too focused on everybody else's business. So did we put effort into a website? No. Did we make salary surveys and, tech papers and stuff like that? No. Did we focus heavily on contracting, which we found a little bit boring? No. Did we get coaching? No. Like, we didn't do any of this stuff. We do all that stuff now. But it didn't kind of seem to matter at the time, and hindsight's a beautiful thing. But at the time, it was just going well, and so we just sort of ran with it, and we were just too busy for it all.
Yeah. Where do you think you would be if you did do that from day one?
It's a really interesting question, because you've got some big world events that took place in that mix, like COVID and a essentially a recession over the last 21 months. But if I had all that hindsight, I think we'd be in a similar position. I think that we would probably have a bigger contract book. I think we'd have maybe one or two more staff, but that's the answer. I think we'd have one or two more staff, and I think we'd have a bigger contract book. I think that would be the difference.
That means you'd be 25 to 50% better.
Yes.
Better off.
Yeah, it would be good.
And so, okay, you've been running your business for 8 years. You did mention before around your first, correct me here if I'm wrong, but maybe the first half of your business journey, you really focused on yourselves and maybe investing outside of your business and just using your agency as a vehicle to get more income to do the things that you're passionate about.
Yeah, totally. That's super true. So happy to chat about that. So I think, like, everybody has a why when they get into business. I think for both Jay and I, Jay's my business partner. I want to make sure I give him more airtime on this, because he really should be sitting here with me. He's in the office doing recruitment.
Oh, shit. Jay's got the short end of the stick.
Got the short end of the deal. But he's very aligned with me on all these things. But, we were having big conversations and, keeping in mind we're best mates as well. So you have pretty real chats. Our kind of vision for life was, we want to one day have a nice family home. We want to have freedom. we want to kind of do things on our terms, right? And so for the first leg of our business, we never sat there, I should go back. We never sat there and said, let's build a 50-person powerhouse agency. Like that kind of wasn't what we were after. Maybe we'll decide to do that later in our career. Who knows? Mm-hmm. But yeah, the beginning was we were really interested in using a business as a vehicle for investment. And it was interesting, like throughout my career, I kind of got introduced to these different things. Like in my last business before Hyre, where I was working with a startup, they were planning a listing, they were going to go public. And the CTO was like, well, look, if you can get X amount together amongst all your friends, like you can buy some of the pre-IPO shares, I think it's going to go well. And so I did, and we did, and it did go really well. And so that was like a first taste in investing. And it was pretty cool. Like we were really excited by it. It was this whole new world. And then when we started our business, we were in a WeWork. You're sitting around, you're networking with different people. And the guy that we ended up sitting next to the most was a property buyer. He focused on buying properties in Brisbane, like a strategy really focused on land value, old houses, up and coming suburbs. And we sat with him for, this is probably like the better part of 2 years before we could actually do this. Like we were still a small business and like figuring out life. But by the time we got to the point where we could make that decision and do it,
buy a property.
Like we knew so much about it because we're sitting next to Old Mate every day. And so all that stuff just really excited us. Like it could be argued too much at times and maybe at times took our focus away from what we were meant to be doing. But I think that's like a shiny toy phase anyone goes through with anything. But yeah, we really enjoyed that phase of the business. So yeah, when the business was doing well, and we would get to the end of the quarter and be like, right, well, there's X profits. We could increase headcount, we could do this, we could do that, or we could invest in property, we could invest in shares, we could invest in crypto. And we did all of that stuff at various times over the last few years. And it was a lot of fun. There were some great wins, there was a couple of losses, but we're pretty educated about it now. But probably the most meaningful stuff that we've done in that space directly related to our industry is private investments into different companies that are growing in Australia. So we're invested in like 11 different tech companies.
Is there a minimum? Like, do you have to minimum amount you have to put forward, or how does it work?
No. So, I mean, it depends who you're doing it through. So like some of the times we've known the founders directly and they've had clear minimums. But sometimes, when companies are doing investment rounds, it's not just about getting money to the table. It's about getting expertise with shared interest. So there were times where we were like, oh, we want to put in X. And they would come back and be like, no, it has to be less than that. We want you to put in Y because we want to let this other person in as well. So that happens quite a lot. Actually, the main thing that I experienced throughout that is, your allocation's actually getting pushed back because they would want more people and who are going to be able to bring more
smart money.
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
But no, like you don't need large amounts of money. Like some of them could be as little as 5,000, but some of them could be a minimum of 50,000. It just sort of depends on the situation. And we joined a network called 1013. They're headquartered out of Brisbane.
Is that Old Mate? Who runs that?
Steve Baxter,
yeah,
Shark Tank guy.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool. It's like he's basically out there.
It's a syndicate.
Yeah, it's a syndicate investing where they're out bidding for portions of VC rounds, and they get some pretty cool companies like Mr. Yum, Go One, Chipper would be like just three off the top of my head that we've been involved in anyway. And so these are really cool companies that Jay and I already knew about from a recruitment standpoint and understood how amazing the talent in these businesses were. And so it seemed like an exciting thing to get involved with. But I think as well, more broadly outside of that, we felt it was a statement as directors of our business to the tech space saying, like, you guys have been very accommodating of us and supported our business. Like, we want to support the industry that we're a part of. So there's that element to it as well.
Okay, so there's a recruiter out there who's listening to this. They're getting jacked up.
Yeah.
They're getting excited.
Brilliant.
They're going, I want to do that.
Buzzing.
Yeah. So you've started your agency. Initially, it was to essentially create a vehicle where you could earn more money and then reinvest in things you're excited about.
Yep.
And so you've been able to now invest into 11 different companies. Is there a kind of a blueprint, a method to that? I'm going to put away 20% of the business profits to invest in X companies. Is it gut feel? Like, what actually is the process to do this?
Yeah, it's a really good question because we probably started with no structure with that, and now we have quite a structure. Got to sort of, when we started, and just to like paint some context, and this is not to big note, but this is just to help create context. Our first full year, we did pretty close to 2 million, and we're in a WeWork, so it's costing us nothing. Like the profits are like quite big, but we also didn't really understand like what's the tax component here, like what's coming up. So it took a really long time to understand what was actually going to be ours out of that, and so out of caution, we just didn't touch it. So by the time we really started this, we're kind of 2 or 3 years into our business, and you know, a reasonable amount of money had sort of piled up, allowing us to do things in a not overly analytical fashion. Whereas fast forward to now, where we are thinking about, right, what's our head count, what's our burn rate per month, based on, like, I work out my metrics like this. I'd be like, what is the worst quarter we've ever had in our lifespan as a business? And I want to know that I've got,
from an OPEX standpoint or a revenue?
From I'm real simple with finance, like win, lose. Like what's the biggest like loss we've ever taken in a quarter, okay, right? So I don't know. Let's say, just making up imaginary numbers. Let's say it was 50K.
Yep.
I would want to know that I have enough in the bank to survive for a year and a half, running consistently at that worst performance rate. And anything outside of that, once you've had the growth conversation, so you're at the end of the quarter, right, we've got the runway here, we're secured for a year and a half based on X and Y. You know, what are the growth things that we want to do? Do we want to hire staff? Do we want to invest more in marketing? Do we want to invest in AI? Do we want to invest in our website? Is there anything? Yes, no. Okay, well, based on the quarter, there's X here. We can take Y. So it's kind of how we do it now. Like, to start with, I'll be honest, it was a bit just like hands in the cookie jar when you felt like it, which is I do not recommend.
Mate, literally every agency owner does that right now. I swear.
I'd be saying to you, like, the 2 most important things of starting a business is pick your partner really wisely. You know, like, me and Jay are best of mates, but we also fight like brothers. But if I got a flat tire at 4 a.m, he's showing up, and vice versa. And so,
what's it like? You said he was a 15-year internal finance recruiter.
Yeah, so sorry, not quite 15 years internal. He was internal for 7 years. Jay's a bit older than me, but he was internal for 7 years. But prior to that, I think he'd worked 5 years in agencies in London, all in tech.
Gotcha.
And then he came out here to build the Lab 49 office in Australia, which he did really successfully, and was just kind of, you know, he was always an agency recruiter at heart. That's just the situation.
Because I'm thinking, geez, you're partnering up with an internal. Hey, what are you doing?
Internal recruiter for a consulting business, I think, is a bit different.
Okay.
Internal recruiter for maybe a product business. But like he loves delivery and recruitment. Like, he's flipping amazing at it. So, you know, he was like, glove fit back into agency land. No worries there.
Did you have any moments as business partners? Because getting into business with someone is actually really challenging.
Yeah.
Like, we see recruiters getting into business with each other all the time.
Yeah.
And we see other business owners, obviously not part of our network, constantly fight, dissolve the business, start a new one. Like, it's probably one of the most common reasons why companies fail is because the 2 business leaders fight. They go separate ways. One half of the business goes that way, where the other half goes that way, and it's a massive mess.
Totally.
So have you had any moments for you two where you've thought, I'm going to punt this guy out the door and I'm going to go my separate way?
Weekly basis sometimes. I know he'll laugh when he hears this. No, I'm super real about that. Like, I would say the first 3 years of our business, if you said what was the biggest challenge, it was me and Jay navigating our relationship as co-founders and figuring out who does what and how things should be done. And because when you're mates, before, you know, like, quite often the scenario you describe as 2 colleagues meeting each other at work and, you know, professionally knowing each other and deciding to go out and start a recruitment business, where we're mates. Like, I've seen him throw up after too much alcohol. Like, you know, you're close. So your lines of professionalism aren't really there. So you're always going to say what you think, which is a good thing.
Okay, I was about to say, is that a disadvantage or an advantage?
It's an advantage for us because when we have had arguments, it's like a storm in a teacup because we couldn't escape each other. We have the same friends. We're at the same barbecues. So you could have a mad argument on a Friday and then on Saturdays at the barbecue, you're like, oh, hey, bro, you want a beer? You know what I mean? Like, so that was really, really common with us sporadically throughout. But funnily enough, anytime that we've experienced challenges, whether it be COVID, personal challenges, the last 18 months of the tech space, there's no fighting. It's like this dream team that comes together. It's really weird.
Because you know that's when you have to support each other.
Totally. It's super easy to ride the bike down the hill and you've probably got lots of time to focus on little things and get pissy about it and have an argument. But when you're focused on going up the hill and like all your energy just needs to go in a straight line, we don't have time for it. But I think the strength of our relationship has been a big part of the success of our company because clients can see, like, we have a pattern between us, like partners and talent, everyone, they know we're mates. It's kind of like a package deal. Like Jay is everything I'm not and vice versa from a business perspective. So it works really well. But yeah, we definitely have had arguments and we've had some like real spats at each other. And like, I guess my only advice to anyone like dealing with anything like that, give it time because it is just like any other relationship. It will just inevitably get better. You'll just get used to each other's quirks. But also like in those scenarios, it's good to have a mediator. So there was 3 of us that lived in this infamous flat. The third one actually owned a recruitment company at the time. He was kind of like our mentor from afar. We're all really good mates. Yeah, okay, cool. He's gone on to start a fintech business now. But he would know when Jay and I were fighting. And he would almost sit us down and have a chat to us a bit like dad, and that was always really helpful. So yeah, bringing a third party in, I think, like can sometimes just create perspective. Like you're fighting over nothing. It's stupid.
Was there something that happened after that third year in business where you kind of got over those little fights?
Totally.
And I guess just to add to that, how did you figure out who's responsible for what?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I think after 3 years, our jobs naturally started to change and take shape because the business was getting bigger. You know, to start with, when you're two-man band, you're just sitting there both billing like how many interviews have you booked? How many client meetings have you booked? And like you're doing the same thing. Whereas as you're getting bigger, you naturally assume different roles. Jay sort of probably gravitated more toward the hands-on recruitment, hands-on winning loads of business, been out there networking, been social. He's probably a more like free-spirited, big picture kind of guy. And I sort of gravitated more towards like the operations, the finance, looking after the staff, been really clear about who's doing what and why because I'm a little bit more detail orientated. That's not to say that each of us didn't play some of those roles occasionally, but that's sort of how the partnership started to form. And over time, we just respected the fact that that's how it worked. And we were kind of grateful for it because I know that he didn't want to be talking to accountants or looking at spreadsheets or doing people management. And, I wasn't buzzing about going out to 100 events all the time. So, we were picking up the slack for each other and operating as a team is kind of, but yeah, it did just sort of take its natural path because we both took turns at those other jobs. But that's, when things are, that's when our headcount was a little bigger, whereas like at the moment, we're probably doing the exact same job again. But I feel like we're both really enjoying it, like being back in the saddle and just, after 2 years of kind of being kind of in the background a bit, now being really hands-on, like the buzz is just that we're having fun with it.
Nice.
Yeah.
You spoke about the tech sort of downfall over the last 18 months.
Yeah.
How bad was it?
I'd say pretty bad, man. And like, especially if you're not a big contract house and especially if you didn't work with lots of corporates. But then again, like anyone I talked to in techs had it pretty bad. We noticed that August 22, we were like, it's a bit weird. We had a pretty bad month there. Like, seems odd. No worries, it will be fine. And yeah, it sort of kind of trended like that until the end of 22. And then 23 just kind of continued. I think we were, as an industry, in a bit of denial, probably till mid-23. And yeah, it was going down and down and down. It was, completely driven. So the tech industry is, I think, very led by investment and liquidity, right? So when you have a once in 30-year global event where, the whole world tightens up interest rates and in a serious way. So you track it back, like we started April 22 in America, they start lifting interest rates aggressively. You can see the tech companies laying off people in droves. Didn't get to Australia until like August. And then the trend continued. And like you'll know, it's nothing, we hear nothing. We constantly hear about it in the news. We've had like 13 interest rate increases in Australia over the last little while. And the, cash rate's highest it's been in 30 years. And the GDP last year is 0.8% is the worst GDP recorded in 30 years. And it's, reflective of the 1991 recession, and we've been in a household recession for 7 consecutive quarters, and the only thing that's really kept it up is government spending and immigration. So all those things combined, back to the tech space, there's no VC money going in. There's companies that already have their VC money, but that Series B you were going to get, that we said, like 12 months you'll be able to get the Series B, hit these milestones. No, that has to last 2 years now. So that just running down the chain, everything tightened up. And so, like naturally recruitment like dried up along with that.
So are we talking like a 50% drop? Are we talking 10%? Like how bad?
I think in our business at its worst we're 50, sometimes 60%. Like it depends on what you want to compare it against. You want to compare it against your
best
month or a normal year. And then there's the variability of size. You're 10 there, but you're 8 here. So it's hard to like pinpoint it down, but I think like 50% is a fair guess, maybe more.
It was even rougher for some people. Like Matt was one of the guys at work. Matt, he's 20 years in the tech space, and he coaches a lot of recruiters.
Yeah.
And he was saying that some of his mates that are good for $1 million year in, year out were just getting over 300K.
Yeah, that sounds super accurate. And I think that the tough thing about that situation for most people was like our business model. When we employed people and they came into the business, we're like, right, you're a consultant, you're going to go win business and bring in clients and it's going to grow the whole shebang. That really never happened. Like Jay and I won all the business and here you have the jobs and fill them. That's sort of the 90% of like how our agency worked. And so, we have to take some responsibility for that. We should have pushed the narrative more of do more BD. It'll benefit you in the long run or help build your brand, your business. But we had so much work on again. So it was just like, it's all going well. People are billing, people are happy, people are getting paid bonuses, just let it be type thing. But those same people sadly had to start trying to build this network and like a down climate. Like the only people answering calls for me were like people I'd known for years and years, and you've got that personal relationship with them and they're going to want to help you because, you've done business for years together. You're not like the greatest recruiter in the world is not going to be able to create those relationships in essentially a recession. The doors just get locked, and that's basically what we experienced.
So what did you do there? Because I'm sure that it would be pretty daunting. August 2022 hits, and you go, "Geez, we were doing 150, 200, 250K months, and now we've just done an 80K month and we've broken even, and now we're starting to go a little bit backwards."
Yeah.
Were you thinking, do I need to let people go? Did you let people go?
Yeah.
Like, what did you have to tighten up or change to make sure that your business could withstand, as you put it, 50K a quarter or whatever it was, your worst quarter, or I can't remember exactly the number, but how do you withstand consecutive bad quarters if this continues longer than you expect?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty similar to like how people approach the COVID thing. Like you did have to start getting cost conscious real quick.
Yeah.
We weren't in a situation of like sitting everyone down and being like, right, we're going to have to make X amount redundant, which was a blessed position for us at the time. But with hindsight, don't really know if that was a pro or a con. But essentially, like we cut operational expense everywhere we could. And this is coming off the bougiest time. 21 and 22 were
best ever.
You get a super
you would
yacht at
trip
Christmas.
over a deal.
Yeah, totally. Throw rocks and you're making placements. Like it was very easy back then.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that will happen again at some point. But what we really had to sit down and be honest about with all of our staff who had been hired into consultant positions was, guys, like, and I had said this loads and loads of times to the team before, like the sun's not staying out forever. Like, put some effort into making your own networks and stuff. Again, like I mentioned earlier, I didn't push it that hard, but it was always a conversation. But yeah, we had to, and it was probably not till really like, I don't know, I'm going to say like Jan 23, Jan or Feb 23, where we were like, no, this isn't a bad quarter. This is something much bigger. This is real.
23 or 24?
23.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've experienced a bit of bumpiness in 22. We've come into the new year, but it'll be grand. We had such a hot period, and then it's definitely not. So we've really recognized at that point, it's not like a light on or off switch. It takes time to really sort of realize what's going on. You're seeing all around you, media, etc. But yeah, we had to sit down, have difficult conversations with our staff, and basically say, we're not going to be able to provide all the work that we have been providing for you guys to fill. If we get it, we'll give it to you, obviously, but you need to be independent here. You have to basically go out and win business, and we'll support you as much as we can with that, but you ultimately have to make that happen. And yeah, it didn't go down that well, to be completely
People self-elect.
They weren't buzzing.
They weren't buzzing about that.
No one was excited about the 2023 Let's Go meeting. Mate, no one actually left, because we do have a really nice culture and a really nice team. And so, anyone listening to this, there was a part of that. They're all phenomenal people, and have landed on their feet well. And some are in the industry, and some of them are out the industry, and wish them nothing but the best. But the facts were, it was we're not a huge contract house. We've got a little book. It's not going to pay for the wages of, 9 people at that time in an office. You have to win business. And that's actually how recruitment has been for forever.
Yeah.
So it almost kind of pissed me off a little bit when I was getting this sort of shock and all. What do you mean we've got to win business? I was like, come on.
You've created monsters.
Yeah, created monsters.
Yeah.
And so we fought hard throughout that year through to October to make that happen. Look, I'm just going to be real. We didn't really win that much business. It was not the environment to really do it. So we had to make some tough decisions in terms of reducing the business headcount. Yeah. We did that as respectfully as we possibly could, and we'd happily have a beer with any of them in the street, or happy to bump into any of them. So I think it was on the best terms it possibly could be, and just get really smart about operational expenditure. But also we did use that time as a bit of an investment period. I mentioned earlier, we weren't really too focused on doing the business stuff because we were so busy that whole time. So we used that time we did a full brand facelift last year. We did the website. We started the salary guides and tech papers. We retooled the whole business with different stuff that allows us to do all this new cool stuff more. What's the word I'm looking for? No, it's gone. But it's good. It helps us be more efficient.
You know what? I resonate with that a lot. I went through a similar scenario during COVID.
Yeah.
Vendito's a perm agency.
Right.
I think we had maybe 12 consultants at the time, and COVID happened. It was the first month ever in Vendito history. I think we brought in $6,000. For the month. Yeah. And I had 12 consultants. Yeah. And I think we're going backwards $120,000 a month.
Yeah.
And I sat there and, I speak to my mum about this a lot. She's, a bit of a mentor, kind of someone that I bounce ideas off.
Yeah.
And I was almost a little bit heroic at the time. I'm like, yeah, Mum, it's all good. I'm not letting anyone go. We've got a bit of cash in the bank. We'll just keep it going. Mum turns around and goes, you'll be fucking broke in 3 months, mate.
Yeah.
And I was like,
I love that.
Oh. She's like, you need to fuck everyone off.
Yeah.
It's not performing. And I was like, oh, okay. And then had to just go out and just go, hey guys, look, this is the lay of land. No one's winning business right now. All our pipeline's dried up. And I think that was the first moment that I ever thought, maybe running a recruitment agency is not for me. That was the first moment ever. I thought, I might not actually be a recruit. I don't know what my career is going to be now in the next 6 months if this continues.
Yeah.
Thankfully, it was absolute gravy. You just have to hold on for 3 months, and then the boom comes and you're good to go.
Plus millions in government stimulus.
Yeah. And so when I look back on that, and the reason why your story reminded me of that is, I was very bougie back then too. Great office, nice car, spending my, hands in the cookie jar.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until that happened where I became a much more wiser business owner to go, that's fat.
Yeah,
Don't buy that. Don't put that in. Yep. We don't need this software. I started cutting up my business card every 3 months to stop all the subscriptions coming off my account.
Yeah, I've done that.
And getting a new account. Yeah. And so it's interesting that you share that, because at the time it's not great.
Nah.
But in hindsight, just like the boiler room that you mentioned
Totally.
before in Auckland, those are the things that actually make you like wiser, smarter, more robust business people.
Yeah, I mean, you going through that can empathize exactly with how we're feeling in that scenario. And like COVID for us, similar, but we wouldn't have had as many consultants in COVID. It was 3 months, and it boomed after it, and so it was long. And then the government stimulus, right? Whereas this, it was like, well, there's no government stimulus. The expenses are way higher because you haven't mentioned in this equation throughout this whole period you've got inflation. Like LinkedIn's more expensive, job ad is more expensive, so you're getting pushed on both ends, and then your clients are getting pushed as well. So they're like, look, I know we used to work at 15%, but can you do 8%? You're like, what? Yeah. I mean, that we never agreed to 8% to the full audience. But everybody's experiencing the same thing, and that absolutely, it was a really tough, stressful time. I think if it's funny you mentioned your mum, because my dad, he literally said the same thing to me, and probably like halfway through 23, it was like, you just need to make some tough decisions and let these people go. But we empathically as humans did not want to do that. Like, it's quite a serious responsibility, I think, when you're an employer, and that like you're responsible for paying this person's rent for their life.
Yeah.
I don't know if people think about that too often, but I took that pretty seriously, and so I didn't want to just be like, sorry guys, the party's over, you have to all leave now. Like, I wanted to like give it a decent run, but
when someone says that to you for the first time, you go, holy shit, really? Like when my mum said to me, you got to get rid of like half of these people, like tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I sat there and I thought, no, that's a bit dramatic, Mum. What are you talking about? I'm not doing that. I sat on it for like a week. Mum's reminded me again, you're going to have to let these people go, Blake. It's either you let them go and at least half of them survive, and so do you, or you sit there and try and, float everyone's, 12 people's salaries, not making any money, and all of you don't have a job. So which one is it?
Yeah. It's so tough, and like, it's not what you want. It's completely out of your control. And it's just, it's it's the most uncomfortable position to be in, I think, as a business owner. But again, it's, it's almost similar to the conversation I explained when I was leaving Ashdown with the founders. Once you actually have the chat, it's almost like a sigh of relief for them, because,
they end up finding something better.
Totally.
They're better off.
Yeah. And like, they've been disheartened, like through no fault of your own, but like, they're not able to be successful in your business right now.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter whether it's the economy's fault, your fault, their fault, who cares? Like, they're not successful. It's your business. That's what's in their head. So it is, I did find almost every time it was like a bit of a sigh of relief. They landed on their feet. It was all fine. And so if I had hindsight, I probably would have made some of those decisions faster. But again, when you're in it, you just don't know. And then we were, super blessed from about July last year. Things just started to tick back up again, and it's certainly looking really promising for this year.
Why is that? What happened?
It's a great question. I think that so a lot of money started flowing back into the market. So I would like to think that smart investors are 6 months ahead of the curve, right? Mm-hmm. So America made their first interest rate cut in September. It was pretty clear that was going to come. And so we're starting to see things go good from July. So I'm making assumptions that that investment is starting to happen, because I feel like that was the bottom. And I feel like people who were really in the know with that stuff were investing, and they felt like there was liquidity flowing back into the space. But I also think, we encountered a lot of scenarios where people in their roles were under-resourced, they were getting burnt out, the companies are putting off hiring more people to help because of this sort of cost concern. The July term would have been a new financial year budget. There would have been some kind of budget. So a bit of that as well. And I think towards the back end of the year, inflation figures started to look better. There's more chatter about there will be a rate cut rather than a rate increase. And like general sense of like, I think it's kind of getting better, but I'm still being a bit careful. That and our small size at that stage was enough to shake enough work out the tree where we could be quite successful. And we won an exclusive company that got like an $8 million funding round. And we had some really, really positive partnership with them throughout last year, which was great. And then, this year it seems like the optimism's definitely there. So I'm not saying it would be back to like before 2022, but it's definitely on the road to recovery as far as I can see.
Yeah, the actual business sentiment is way more positive than any time last year.
I think like it could be any company, it doesn't have to be tech. There's only so long you can sit still before you're irrelevant. You know, one thing we've learned running our agency, and like, I don't know if this is like a good thing or a bad thing, but, you know, when I look at the clients that we worked with in 2017, we're not working with them now, or maybe like one of them. And that's not because we had any type of fallout. Those businesses have changed, the people have changed, our service isn't relevant to them for whatever reason. They've grown to a point where they have a large internal talent team, et cetera, et cetera. So kind of if you're not like growing, you're dying. And so I don't think companies can sit still for too long, like we sort of saw last year.
And where, like you mentioned before about the source of information most recruiters get, where do you get your source of information, like your industry intel and finding stuff out?
So it's a really good point to raise, because I think this is a game changer for recruiters depending on how much they want to invest in, and it depends on how interested they are as well. Like you have to have genuine interest. So, you know, I referenced the bird's eye view of the market at the start. It's your choice how big that bird's eye view is. If it's just on what's going on within the software engineering space in banks in Sydney, then that's totally fine. But you're going to be able to have super powerful conversations if you understand what's going on domestically in the economy, if you understand who's getting money and why. You'll be able to have even more powerful conversations if you understand globally what's going on, if you understand what GDP is doing, like what immigration's doing, like all these different things that like contribute to our economy that we then recruit in. So I spent a lot of time on the AFR. I've spent a lot of time
any businesses that have come up recently that
you may recognize
you recognize
on the AFR. None that like are jumping out immediately.
Yeah.
What were you guys hinting at? Were you guys in the AFR?
Yeah.
Oh God, the egg on the face.
No, that's right.
I think we were number one actually.
Am I getting ejected now? That's a huge achievement. Congrats. It's amazing. Clearly I need to read a little closer.
You don't look at top 10, you look at like 20 to 50 because they're going to be easy to get into.
I definitely could read it a little closer, but it's a great source of information. Smart Companies, really good website. Just, I don't know, like I follow loads of people on LinkedIn, loads of people on X or Twitter or whatever it's called now. Loads and loads of like podcasts on YouTube or Spotify. But it has to be stuff you're generally interested in. And so, you know, I've got a mortgage, so over the last 2 years I've been pretty interested in understanding what this whole interest rate thing's all about. And I've now learned a lot about it and understand how it ties into business and whereas, you know, 2 years ago I wouldn't have known much about it or cared.
So your consultants at the moment, do you have like a bit of a game plan, a bit of a 101 of how to educate yourself to have more powerful conversations with clients?
Not massively, to be honest, because it's not everyone's style. So, you know, the different personalities we have operate different ways. And one thing I learned really early on in people, maybe not early on, but I've learned in people leadership over the last few years is, like in my early days of people leadership, I'd be trying to clone myself. You know, get interested in this, that, and the other, all the stuff we just mentioned. But what I realized really quickly is like, that's actually like, no one else is going to be me and I'm not going to be you, and everybody's different and everyone has their own vibe. And so I think I'm more focused on bringing out that vibe in each person, no matter what that is individually. Like some people are just like the most lovable social butterflies professionally and just kick around the place and people just want to work with them, but might not know that much about any of this stuff, but still get the job done. And fair play to them. They do a great job. They get results. Like I'm not going to sit that person down and tell them to start studying economics. So no, I try not to be too overbearing in that sense. Like I set their expectations as simply as possible, because another thing I've kind of learned over time is too many expectations and too many different things and too many different metrics just create like cloud in your brain. So like I'd just be saying to everyone, just do 2 placements a month. That's it. We're all having a good life if you do 2 a month. And then if they're like, all right, well, I'm stuck here. How shall I do this? Or I'm not getting wins here. Why? Then you peel the onion back and be like, well, okay, this has worked for me, or let's look at this, or let's look at that. But yeah, I think I predominantly pissed people off in the past doing like one-on-ones and been like, how many of this have you done this week? How many of that? And that's how I was trained.
Yeah.
But it's just like, while it's important, it wasn't popular. So if people are being successful, I'm not going to really ask too many questions about all that stuff. If they're not, then yeah, we do. But I kind of want people just to be themselves, and I sort of tend to hire based on people's individualism.
Do you hire recruiters or do you hire outside and train them up?
Just thinking back over the years of stuff,
And what's worked better?
all recruiters
Really?
so far
Okay.
of some experience level, some definitely more junior than others. I'll be real, like I've had the worst success with the most senior people I've hired.
Oh, me too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's always.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
worst.
Yeah.
I've had, multiple people on almost 200K a year, and it was a disaster.
Yeah.
What I really think works well, so like one of our biggest success stories, he's actually, he was amazing, but he actually chose to leave the industry, become a builder, because he's very passionate about it. But he started as a personal trainer and then got into recruitment. And that background, it's similar to me in the DJ promoting days. Like, you have to walk around the gym every day. You have to hustle new clients. You have to be able to pitch why you're different to the other 50 personal trainers standing there at Fitness First. Like, I look at that experience and hold quite a bit of value in it. So if I ever see anything like, personal trainer, anything to do with like sports or athleticism where there's like quite a lot of discipline involved, even door-to-door sales, like ideally a bit further back in your career. But like these things, they lay foundations that allow you to not be fazed by no.
Or feedback in general.
Yeah.
Like if you can be on the fly, someone say or does something on the phone, you can be like, hey, look, really like this, let's fix that. And they're like, yep, sweet.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Team sports as well, just that like collaboration piece. But yeah, that type of experience I value really, really highly. I've had the worst success with hiring super senior people, or as bad as it sounds, super educated people. It just, I don't know why, but it just hasn't worked. The type of agency we are, been really boutique, been really specialized, quite often working really closely with founders and C-suite staff. I don't really have the capacity or the room to probably have someone super, super, super junior, because it's not like when you work with a big insurance company or something, and the roles come in, and then I can just throw them down the trough to old mate down there who's just going to like find some CVs and come back. It's just sort of not how it works. Like, you are going to need to engage with them directly if you're involved, because we're small like that. So somewhere in that like middle ground is like, I'd be looking for me after my first agency, like finding people out of a big agency who've maybe done something a little interesting sales related in the past, who are just hungry. That's a good fit for us. But also I think that we probably offer a pretty good level of work-life balance and freedom. Like, we only do 2 days a week in the office. Jade's got a 1-year-old daughter. Like, I've got a little dog. Like, we've all got stuff going on. If you work with us, like, we trust that you're not a child and can figure it out. Obviously always there to help, but I think that's sort of the appeal of working for a smaller, more boutique business.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
So what's next then? What's next for Hyre? Like, what do you go? Have you done your 2025 goals?
Yeah.
New year, new me? Like,
Yeah.
what do you hope to achieve this year?
Mate, they don't sound exciting when you say them out loud, but like, really for us, it's just about continuing doing what we're doing, because it is going really well. We had a wildly successful period, sort of call it 2017 through to the end of 22. We learned a lot in that period. We did some things really well. We also made some stupid mistakes. I feel like this period of downtime, we've really refined what that looks like. And I think, like Jay said to me at the meeting, it's the quote, I keep teasing him about it, the quote in our sort of beginning of year meeting or whatever, he was like, it's time for us to grow up. And so, that's a mantra that we're taking on. So it's sort of slow and steady is going to win the race for us. A much bigger investment into the contract side of our business is going to be a big part of it. But also this year, I think this year is just probably see how things continue to move. It's too early to say, because we're in January, right? Like, we've had so many times where we sit and make these grand plans, but it's like planning a sailing trip without knowing which way the wind's going to fly. Like, it's just, there's no point. So I think by like March, we'll start to have a way better feel. If it feels like things are like back, we would definitely increase headcount a little bit. We'd be really focused on contract. We'll make a much bigger effort to proactively market our sales moving forward. Again, back to that, like always on other people's businesses, not our own, we never really did much of that. We have started doing that. We're really seeing value from it. So want to build on that, see what that can do. But I think after the last 18 months, and I reckon most agency owners will feel the same, like we'd just be happy just to like have a good year, not be stressed out about anything, work with some cool partners, work with some cool talent. It doesn't need to be zigzag constantly. You can have some calm in there. So it's a very like nondescript answer, but there it is.
That's awesome. And so how would anyone get in contact with you if they're listening to this podcast and they go, geez, I like the vibe of this guy. 2 days in the office, sign me up. How do they get in contact with you?
LinkedIn or joe@hyre.com.au. I'm always super happy to chat to anyone in the industry about anything. I think recruitment's such a great space where you can do a lot of different things. I don't know if like people appreciate that as much. Like recruitment is not recruitment. The options are pretty broad in terms of what you can get into. And I think, if I look at every other professional service, like law, consulting, accountants, whatever, like they have all these industry bodies where they all catch up and they have lunches together. And like we don't really have that in recruitment. You're kind of trained that your agency, competitor, like fight them if you see them at the pub. Like, whereas I really feel like...
do you reckon we need that?
Nah.
No.
Definitely not.
You don't punch on with anyone at the pub?
Oh, do you reckon we need the
Industry body.
The industry body.
Mate, I think...
Yeah, just a punch on at the pub.
You reckon we need a bit more punch on at the pub?
I don't know necessarily about an industry body, but I think it would be cool to have a lot more collaboration with people in the same space, because you've got a lot in common, a lot to talk about. I think most people who I've met that are any good are always happy to share. There's always going to be the next generation coming through. If you are taking pride in what you do and it's your craft, of course you want to talk to other people that do the same thing. So, I think it'd be good. And I see the internal recruiters. They do it amazingly. We go to the internal recruiter one. They have a meetup like every 3 months. They all show up. So, I think the agency world does need it. There has been some good ones over the years, but they haven't lasted too long. So, I'm always keen to network and chat. If anyone has any questions, super welcome to get in touch.
Mate. Well, thanks for coming on and providing the value to this.
No, it was fun, guys. Thanks for the invite. I really appreciate it.
Cheers.
Awesome. Cheers, brother.
Thanks for tuning in to another Confessions of a Recruiter podcast with Blake and Declan. We hope you enjoyed and got a lot of value and insights out of this episode. If you do have any questions or you would like to recommend someone to come on the Confessions podcast, we would love any introductions. And remember the rule of the podcast: like, share, and recommend it to a friend. Until next time.